Hello and welcome, everyone. I'm delighted to be hosting this session with Dave Devrath from Reed College and Elena and Select from Washington University, St. Louis. It's been a 15-month journey for us at College Fair to host sessions with friends from the other side of the table. The universities, over, I think, 140 odd universities have been at our fairs over these years. Looking back at the changes that we were forced onto in our industry, and of course, students who are listening in their lives, it's been nothing short of a roller coaster for all of us. It's a very pertinent topic that we've chosen today. It's about changing trends in admissions that we've noticed, as well as how students are perceiving um, things like planning their college choices and even the basics of the application process. Earlier today, I was having a chat with Dave, and he did point out that something that we take for obvious as counselors, it's important to go back to discussing even the nitty gritty of different pieces that make a strong application. So I'm going to put myself on hide mode and let our esteemed guests take over the session. Looking forward to many questions from the audience, and post the session, feel free to hop back to the lounge and meet college admissions reps and continue great conversations. We'll also have a next fair coming up, so make sure to stay tuned in terms of our Instagram, or even look out for emails that we send out, and we'll keep seeing you at our events. Take it over, Dave and Alina.
Great. Thank you, Arjun, so much for that nice introduction. Hello, everybody. We are so excited to speak with you about kind of changes and trends and things that we're seeing, and just kind of provide some experience, right, and what this has looked like to help you understand. My name is Elena. I serve as an associate director at Washington University in St. Louis. I'm working primarily with students from South Asia, as well as Central Asia and countries in the Middle East. And I'll let my co-presenter introduce himself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dev. I am a Senior Assistant Dean of International Admissions at Reed College. Reed is in Portland, Oregon on the West Coast. I use he, him pronouns. I'm really excited to chat with you all. I cover the entire world that's not the US, so I will be your admissions counselor and excited to chat with you and present for you all.
Right. So the first thing that we just want to cover is just a little bit about our holistic admissions review, which is a style of application review that many colleges in the United States use, including both Reed and WashU. And through holistic review, we seek to understand students individually and within the context of your background, your experience, your hometown, your school. And it also says that all factors in the application process, right, are part of the review. Both the academic pieces, right? What have you taken in high school? How have you challenged yourself? If you're submitting test scores, right? What that factors into, and other ways that you're excited about learning and excited about academics. But it also factors in those more qualitative pieces of you, right? So how are you engaging your community? How are you spending your time? What are you writing about your essays on, right? So all of these pieces of the application are factored together for that holistic and very contextual review. And I always like to just start with that because I think it provides a great grounding piece to what we're going to talk about in terms of changes to that. Because we seek to understand the full student, there are a lot of things that we have gotten to do differently this year and through the past couple of years as kind of COVID changes the way that we understand students, both in expanding options for students, but obviously there's also been things that we don't have as much access to. So I think that will help kind of ground our conversation today as we share a little bit of those changes. Deb, do you want to take kind of the first testing piece?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I think one of the biggest changes that came out of the pandemic and something that you're seeing trending a little bit differently in a lot of US schools is this idea of testing and sort of what that's meant for us and the application process, as well as a lot of conversation around access and equitable access to testing. At the beginning of the COVID pandemic, a lot of colleges really changed vastly their their testing policies. So you are now seeing a lot of terms that you may not have ever been familiar with, like test optional, test blind, or test flexible, and which is what a lot of schools are nowadays. A school that's test optional is traditionally where a school you can submit your submitting your SAT or ACT scores are optional. If you submit those scores, that college will look at it and use it to assess your application. If you don't submit the test scores, obviously they won't look at it, and they'll look at all the other things that you submitted as a way to assess your application. Test blind schools are schools that will not look at your SAT or ACT scores, even if you submit them. So they will be redacted from the application in an effort to traditionally to be as fair to everybody as possible. Sometimes that's an opportunity that schools might take there as well. Test flexible is where the college is flexible on what kind of testing that you can submit. So, sure, you could submit the SAT or ACT. You could also submit your AP scores, your IB scores, your A levels, your O levels. These are other ways for you to demonstrate your readiness for college through a variety of testing, and it's not just limited to the SAT or ACT.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think it's important to know that some schools were test optional or test blind or test flexible before COVID, right? There were schools that had made that change many, many years ago or more recently. And then a lot of schools, most schools in the United States right now, have some sort of testing optional blind flexible policy because we know how challenging it's been for students to find test sites in your city, in your country, or even just kind of around the world.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing that we want to highlight is just the fact that COVID has had an impact on everybody's lives, right? I'm doing this, which I guess I normally wouldn't do in person necessarily, but right when I'm doing sessions now, I'm in my house, right? I'm in my guest room. And so that's one way, right, that obviously we've all been impacted. We also provided opportunities in the Common App and the Coalition application, all these application platforms provided opportunities in the application for you to share a little bit more information about ways that the COVID-19 impact pandemic or other sorts of impacts to your community you want to tell us about in your application. And there are a few different places within the application for you to do this. One is a community disruption question section in the application, which within the common application. So that's the platform that you're using. You'll see an opportunity to share a little bit of information about kind of any community disruptions, including, of course, COVID-19. There also is an additional information section on pretty much all application platforms, which gives you the opportunity to share more information that you think we need to know about. What I want to highlight about either of these sections, they're completely optional. So not something that students need to use or that is expected that you use, but provides you as a student, if you feel like there's something you need to share with us or want to share with us about how your life has been impacted or changed or experiences that you've had in the past couple of years that you think is important for us to know about, feel free to use that section. It doesn't have to be formal. It doesn't need to be a beautiful essay. It can be bullet points, can be one sentence. But we know that everybody in terms of personal life, right? Maybe in your family or community, you've been impacted. Obviously, your schooling has been impacted, right? Your activities have been impacted. There are many, many ways that you may want to use that space or not. But just a reminder, right, that COVID has really impacted all of us in many, many different ways. And we understand that. And that contextual review allows us to take those things into consideration.
One of the biggest changes, I think, in the college search process has been how you interact with those schools, especially getting access to schools. It's not easy to travel across the world to go see a school, let alone in the middle of a global pandemic with restrictions from airlines and border restrictions. The silver lining to this, however, is that most colleges have created quite a few virtual options and give you a lot of opportunities to go visit that school virtually. There are schools doing campus tours virtually. There are schools doing information sessions virtually. They're doing a bunch of workshops virtually. We're doing these college fairs virtually. So in terms of access, you suddenly have so many more opportunities to go see all these different schools and have the same type of access that other students have. whereas a lot of schools didn't offer a lot of virtual opportunities before. Truthfully, I hope the virtual options is something that sticks around for a very long time, because I think this is a great way for students, like international students, for example, to get to know a lot more about a lot of different schools than they probably ever would have before. Right, traveling to colleges, even as a domestic student, is an expensive feat, and then throw in the fact that you might have to travel internationally to go see a school. That's asking a lot sometimes, and so these virtual options are a great way to connect with institutions, connect with your admissions counselors, connect with professors or current students, and get to hear more about that college, get to hear more about what it's like to be a college student in general, and you don't have to leave your house to do it.
Yeah, the next thing we want to just talk about briefly is a little bit about supplemental items that you can submit to support your application. And I want to provide kind of just a sense of that these things are, one, not required, right? But some students want to submit research abstracts or an additional resume or something like that to kind of add to their story, right? To help us understand you in a different or a new way. Completely optional. But schools have also kind of changed the way that we use supplemental materials or have allowed for different types of supplemental materials, knowing that everyone has had different experiences over the past couple of years. For one example, last year at WashU, we implemented a short 90-second video as part of the application, completely optional, right? A supplemental piece of the application. But it helped us get to see students, right? For you to share your story, share a little bit more about you, or maybe take us around your hometown, right? Have us meet your family, whatever you wanted to do, right? Some schools may have added pieces that are optional, but to help you share your story after you've attended, right, virtual options and learned all about the universities that you're interested in, right? How are you sharing that with us? I also know that there are universities in the US that are saying we don't accept any supplemental materials, right? That have really said we're not accepting any of that. We want to focus on what is required. We don't want to add that additional step for students to figure out if they want to submit testing or submit additional information or submit additional videos or things like that. So know that it's different university to university. And feel free to reach out to different schools if you have questions about what is required, what is optional. But just a reminder that anything is supplemental, anything that is optional, right? We're going to focus primarily on what is required and then add on any pieces that you've submitted to help us learn a little bit more about you. But required is required, optional supplemental is completely optional.
Lastly, there's this topic that you may or may not understand. It's called demonstrated interest. So demonstrated interest is essentially how much interest have you demonstrated, as it is so called, in that college. And this can be measured through a variety of ways. And the reason that we bring it up is because I think nowadays there's a lot more opportunities to do so. There are these virtual opportunities. This is a great way to show interest into the college. Reaching out to your admissions counselors. That's a great way to show interest into the college. Attending a college fair and talking to that college rep. That's a great way to show demonstrated interest. Demonstrated interest is how we measure your level of interest in the college. And some schools, not all, but some schools do take that into consideration when they're reviewing your application. They want to know how interested you've been in them, and how you've connected with them. How have you chatted with them? In what ways have you connected with them? And so we bring that up because I think there's a lot of colleges that currently still utilize demonstrated interest. And with these virtual opportunities, it is so much easier nowadays to show demonstrated interest. Pre-pandemic, one of the best ways to show interest was visiting the school. And that's kind of a hard thing to do, as we've already talked about. But being able to do this virtually, it gives you a lot more opportunities to show that level of interest to schools, and show that you're interested, you want to get to know them a little bit better. That wants us to get to know you a little bit better. It allows us to start getting to know you, especially these smaller colleges, and more liberal arts focused colleges. This idea of community is really important to us, and getting an idea of who you are as a person is really important to us. And so demonstrated interest is one of those ways in which we can do that. Yeah, that's about all we have. Anything else you want to add, Elena?
I don't think so. I think with all of this, right, just a reminder that we're taking everything into consideration that's submitted in your application process, right? We seek to understand you in this process, to learn a little bit more about you, who you are, what matters to you. And so even as things shift and change with admissions, we also, as admissions counselors, are here to answer your questions, right? So if you have more questions about any of this or anything else about either Reed or WashU, right, we are here to answer your questions, obviously now, but in the future as well. And I know that speaks, that's the same for my colleagues at other universities in the US. So feel free to reach out and let us know how we can help.
Yeah, absolutely. And please don't hesitate to visit either Elena or myself at either of our booths, or contact us or any admissions counselor. Really, if you have questions, please don't hesitate to ask your questions. We recognize applying to colleges is a stressful experience, a nerve-wracking experience, especially in a whole new country. So please don't hesitate to ask us questions. I promise you, this we're in this job because we love to help students and we love to connect with you, and so please don't hesitate to reach out. We're always happy to chat.
Thank you, Dev and Alina. It's been a pleasure just hosting you all here. We still have an hour or so at the fairs. So everyone who's watching, rush back to the lounge, meet Dev, Alina, and the rest of us at our tables. Look forward to seeing you there.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.